This anime begins by showing the popular kids at school, including the student council president and vice president, who are well known in the school. The president, Inakumi, is a third-year student, and her vice president, Kazuki, is a second-year student. They seem very close and work well together. Meanwhile, our main character, Yuzato, is quite the opposite of these two. Yuzato is an ordinary person who doesn't have many friends. One day, after school, it starts raining, and Yuzato can't go home because someone is using his umbrella. He considers using another umbrella but feels uncomfortable taking it, so he decides to wait for the rain to stop. However, the rain doesn't let up, and it's getting late. Yuzato wishes he could use magic. Shortly after, Inakumi and Kazuki, who are just leaving school, notice that Yuzato doesn't have an umbrella. It turns out the umbrella belongs to Kazuki, who offers to lend it to Yuzato. They all walk home together and start chatting. Yuzato finds it strange yet pleasant to be getting to know these popular students. During their walk, Yuzato asks Inakumi and Kazuki if the rumors about them dating are true. They clarify that they are not dating but are close because of their student council duties. Inakumi appreciates that someone finally addressed the rumors directly, hoping it would stop people from gossiping about them. Inakumi then asks Yuzato about his future plans, and Yuzato expresses his desire to work after school. Inakumi, who excels in everything, admits she is unsure about her future despite being a third-year student. She feels her future is uncertain in this world. Suddenly, Inakumi and Kazuki hear the sound of a bell, which becomes increasingly clear, but Yuzato hears nothing. A portal appears out of nowhere, which Yuzato believes leads to another world. Inakumi looks excited about the prospect of going to another world and becoming a hero. They are all sucked into the portal. Yuzato wakes up with Kazuki shaking him awake, realizing they are in a different place. Inakumi had also woken Kazuki earlier. In front of them stands King Lloyd from the Linger Kingdom. He explains that 2 years ago, their kingdom was attacked by a demon kingdom. They managed to hold them off but noticed the demons growing stronger. Therefore, the kingdom summoned the three of them to become heroes. Kazuki is upset because they have families in their world and can't just be taken away like this. Inakumi, however, is thrilled at the idea of becoming a hero. Returning is not an option because the summoning spell is one way. Kazuki gets even more frustrated, but Yuzato tries to calm him down, realizing that getting angry won't change anything. King Lloyd begs them to help and promises to find a way to send them back. Inakumi then asks why they were chosen as heroes. Wholesome, presumably an advisor or another character, explains that hearing the sound of the bell before being summoned is a sign they can become heroes. Since Yuzato didn't hear the bell, he was accidentally pulled in with them. They decide to find out what powers they possess using a special orb. Kazuki asks Yuzato if he's okay with not being considered a hero, to which Yuzato replies that he doesn't mind. Wholesome also mentions that Yuzato might have powers too, and since they can't return yet, he should just go along with it. Inakumi is very enthusiastic. When they touch the orb, it changes color to yellow, indicating that Inakumi's power is lightning, which suits her fantasy-obsessed nature. Next, Kazuki, when he held it, seemed to change to white. He said he had the power of light, which was confusing as to what his power was like. According to Wholesome, this power is very rare and thus very strong for fighting demons. Inakumi, who used to be graceful or smart and so on, is no longer like that. After Kazuki was left by Yuzato, when he held it, it seemed to turn green. Wholesome was terrified and immediately took Yuzato to Lloyd's room. She informed him that everything was going smoothly except for Yuzato. He was confused, thinking his power was dangerous, but that wasn't the issue. Upon hearing that his power was green, Lloyd ordered him to hold on to Yuzato for fear of being discovered by someone. Later, the person who was said to have the same power as Yuzato arrived, and everyone panicked at the arrival of a person named Rose. Even though she was on vacation, she wanted to see the newly arrived hero. Seed informed her that Yuzato was not a hero, so he was safe. When she was about to enter the room to see the hero, Yuzato accidentally mentioned that his power was green, and Rose immediately took him away. She would teach him healing magic. Rose is said to be a captain in the kingdom's rescue squad. She took Yuzato far from the castle. Kazuki and Inakumi were curious about what really happened to Yuzato. In fact, Yuzato's power wasn't a problem at all. His power was a very rare healing power. But he would be trained by Rose, and the problem was that the training was said to be very unconventional or harsh. When they arrived, it was planned that Yuzato would become this person's right hand because Yuzato's power was rare. Coincidentally, there were 2 other people with the same power, but in different places. Now, she was also training several other people, but none had healing magic like Yuzato. When those people came out, they looked like prisoners, which was scary. There were 5 of Rose's students, and because their introduction was frightening, Rose scolded them. Rose would start training Yuzato the next morning. He had a bad feeling about it but couldn't refuse. He was frightened by the others before going to bed. He thought about how someone who accidentally got dragged into another world ended up like this. In short, the next morning, when Yusato woke up, he initially thought it was just a dream, but seeing that he was still in another world, he knew it was real. Shortly after, Kazuki and Inakumi came to see Yusato. He seemed fine, but today he would undergo his training. No one knew how strong he could endure the training. Both of them were also starting their training now, and their outfits were cool. Yusato wanted to take advantage of his training there to help those two in future battles. Yusato was not stressed, so Kazuki would try to adapt, and their training would support each other. After that, they both went back home. Only one person remained in good spirits, which was Inakumi. After everything was settled, it was time for Yusato to be given his training regimen for the day. Today's regimen didn't seem heavy. Yusato was told to first feel his magical energy. There, he could feel it but couldn't yet release it. He thought it wasn't hard at all. After that, Yusato was told to read. He couldn't read the world's language, but when he opened the book, he could automatically read it. Those summoned to this world are automatically given translation magic. Rose instructed him to read about the origins of the nation and monsters first. Then he was also given a book to pour out his heart and thoughts. On the second day, his training began. Yusato was told to run. According to him, it was still manageable. The next day was the same. He was told to run again, but this time he was forced to run until his muscles ached. Even though it was painful, Rose healed him and told him to run again. The fourth day was the same, but this time he trained with others. The people there were already used to such training, so it seemed easier. As the days went by, his strength began to show. The next day, even though it rained, Yusato continued his training until he was exhausted, but he wanted to prove that he wasn't weak. As his energy began to emerge, his training progressed. After a week, the training got even tougher, to the point where he received blows. That boy wrote something in his book, and he just found out that Rose could speak Japanese. After that, things got worse. He was even thrown at one point. On the 9th day, even though Yusato was used to being beaten up, this time he could heal his pain with his own power. The next day, since he could control his energy, he got used to it and could heal his pain. On the 11th day, the training menu was increased, so in the afternoon, Yusato was told to do 1,000 push-ups. Again, thanks to his healing power, he could make it easier. Rose told him that if Yusato wanted to quickly help his friends, he had to work hard in his training. If he was slow, his friends wouldn't be able to survive. From that, he got even more motivated. The next day was the same, but he had to do push-ups until nighttime, until his body felt lighter. The next day, Yusato was given weights while running, but because he could control his power, it was no problem. On the 14th day, something different happened. He didn't get any lunch. He asked others, and they said it was eaten by someone named Tom. Perhaps out of frustration, Yusato chased after Tom. In the middle of it, he started to realize that he might be chasing to avoid lunch. A week later, Kazuki and Inakumi came to visit Yusato. This time, they brought the princess. When they arrived at the training site, they were shocked to see Yusato's intense training, doing push-ups with a rock and Rose on top of him. But he didn't flinch. Even when mocked by Rose, he added another rock. This didn't shake him. His body, which could heal itself, quickly recovered. It seemed he had developed as Rose wanted. Everyone who saw was shocked by the training. The knight got angry at Rose for using such harsh training methods, but Rose insisted on using her own methods, especially since Yusato would become her right-hand man. She was very interested in Yusato's spirit. She then told him to rest first while the knight talked to Rose. He still protested Rose's training methods. Yusato was asked about his training and said it was actually light compared to Kazuki's and Inakumi's, who had it easy with just sword training with a knight named Siglis and magic lessons from Wholesome. Seeing this made Yusato envious because his training was so hard. Not that he never complained. He said he wanted to run away at first, but as time went on, he got used to it and became close with the others. Inakumi was impressed by Yusato's adaptation and decided to keep training hard so he could help Kazuki and Inakumi in the future. Soon after, he asked about the person who was with the two of them and found out it was a princess named Celia. She brought food for Yusato. While they were eating, Inakumi became interested in Yusato's well-defined muscles and wanted to touch them. Then Tong arrived with Yusato's lunch, and Yusato became very angry when someone touched his food. They argued as usual, something they did every day. Seeing Yusato's enthusiasm, Kazuki didn't want to be outdone and returned to training. Inakumi did the same and went home. That night, while bathing, Yusato remembered Inakumi's words about how his body had changed. Indeed, he noticed many changes thanks to his hard training, but he still wasn't sure if he could help his friends. The next day, Rose was going to take Yusato out of the castle for training. He didn't know what kind of training it would be, but the others did. Rose left the castle with such fierceness that even the guards were scared. Yusato kept wondering where they were going, but Rose didn't tell him until they arrived at a very dangerous place full of monsters. Rose wanted Yusato to survive in the forest and ordered him to defeat a monster called Blue Grizzly, which was said to be very strong. Since Yuzato hadn't been trained to be a fighter, if he couldn't defeat it, he wouldn't be able to return. Without further ado, Rose threw Yuzato into the forest. Having no other choice, Yuzato had to use his magic to avoid dying. When he landed in the forest, he was fine except for a small cut, which he easily healed. Initially, Yuzato was determined to prove he could fight both the Grand Grizzly and the Blue Grizzly. Suddenly, the Grand Grizzly appeared behind him, and Yuzato was chased because the monster was terrifying like a huge bear. Mustering his courage, Yuzato remembered his mission to defeat the monster. Just as he was ready to fight, the Blue Grizzly appeared, making it a one-on-one battle. Yuzato ran away from the monsters again until he heard the sound of a waterfall ahead. He was forced to jump, and the monsters didn't follow him. He rested by the river, took out the emergency food, knife, and water Rose had provided, but there was no fire starter. Frustrated with Rose, he decided to continue the next day. Yuzato had no choice but to defeat the Grand Grizzly himself. On the first day, he planned to find the Grand Grizzly's home. While searching, he heard something he thought might be the Grand Grizzly but found an injured rabbit instead. Yuzato healed the rabbit and continued his search. Unexpectedly, the rabbit started following him. He was concerned because it was dangerous, but the rabbit kept following him, until finally he realized that the rabbit knew the whereabouts of Grand Grizzly. These grizzlies didn't seem scary at all. In fact, they were quite funny, especially their Blue Grizzly's cub. After knowing their existence, Yuzato checked that place every day, but he hadn't decided to execute them yet. Every day, he drank river water, which made his stomach poison, but fortunately, thanks to his healing power, he could endure it. Also, the rabbit he unintentionally made his companion told him about a place with suitable drinking water, which looked clearer than the river water he often drank. Not long after, the rabbit got slightly scared out of the blue because it heard something. When it looked, it got even more scared. Consequently, Yuzato got curious. Why was this rabbit usually fearless when it saw Grand Grizzly? The closer they got, the more nervous the rabbit became, and Yuzato began to sense that something was approaching him. After waiting for a while, something finally appeared, a large snake, very dangerous, and worse, a monster not found in any of the books Yuzato read. It was undoubtedly dangerous. Yuzato didn't want to deal with such a big snake, so he went home. Every day, Yuzato continued to check on Grand Grizzly, who seemed motionless and calm. He still had no intention to execute them. However, as the situation was now unfavorable due to the presence of the large snake, Yuzato postponed his plan. Yesterday, and the day after, when Yuzato was planning to carry out his mission, it started raining there, plus he got advice from the rabbit not to go because it was dangerous. So, Yuzato obediently followed the rabbit's advice. When the rain stopped and it was clear again, Yuzato went straight to where Grand Grizzly was. But to his surprise, when he arrived, both Grand Grizzly and the blue one were already defeated. Yuzato didn't expect this to happen. He was about to execute them when he noticed that Grand Grizzly had been killed by the large snake. Shortly after, only its cub remained, and it was deeply saddened by its parents' death. Seeing this, Yuzato, who initially intended to complete his mission, changed his mind. Instead, he decided to help the Blue Grizzly's cub seek revenge by defeating the giant snake. He instructed it to wait there while he tried to find the snake. Meanwhile, Inukami and Kazuki wanted to meet Yuzato. They were informed that Yuzato was out training with Rose, and he had been training for about 10 days. Kazuki was a bit worried about Yuzato's training with Rose, but his friends assured him that nothing bad would happen to Yuzato if he continued training with Rose. After their training, they returned. However, Kazuki's mind was still uneasy. He was still thinking about Yuzato. Inukami tried to reassure Kazuki not to worry about Yuzato. Moreover, Yuzato was preparing for battle. He had sharpened bamboo sticks and trained physically and with some stretching exercises. Once everything was ready, Yuzato asked the rabbit about the snake's whereabouts. He was sure it knew where it was. The rabbit immediately led Yuzato to where the snake was. Not long after, he found it, but the Blue Grizzly's cub was already engaged in a duel with it. Yuzato was very scared, but he gathered his courage and, fortunately, wasn't eaten by the snake. Instead, he managed to make it lose one eye with his sharpened bamboo stick. However, the fight was not over yet. Yuzato was thrown back and didn't give up. He still had to make the other eye of the snake blind. This time, Yuzato's attempt failed. He was attacked back by the snake and got bitten. However, because he had a knife in the hand the snake bit, he managed to stab it, which made the snake release its grip, allowing his hand to be freed. After being attacked like that, Yuzato felt that he was poisoned by the large snake, but because he knew how to heal it, Yuzato managed to make the poison disappear. He was ready to attack again. This time, Blue Grizzly helped him, fortunately. Thanks to him, Yuzato managed to render the snake powerless and attacked its other eye. However, not with the right eye. He thought it was all over. Initially, Yuzato wanted to heal Blue Grizzly, but his energy was depleted from healing the poison earlier. Shortly after, the snake suddenly stood up again. Yuzato couldn't do anything anymore. He thought today might be his end. He remembered it was all because of Rose. He was so angry at her, cursing her until she appeared and subdued her snake. Usato didn't expect Rose to come to his aid. He also found it strange that Rose knew where he was. It turned out, it was thanks to the rabbit that was always with Usato. It was actually her pet, following Usato around to keep an eye on him. Rose was also in the forest outskirts, watching over Usato, worried. She didn't expect this monstrous snake to appear, a modified monster snake from the Demon Kingdom, a remnant of the war. Knights like Sigley couldn't defeat it, and Rose couldn't believe that Grand Grizzly lost. Grand Grizzly was also strong. Even the strongest couldn't defeat it without severe injuries. Usato's mission was indeed heavy, especially for a beginner like him. Given such difficult tasks right away, he surely couldn't handle it. Actually, Rose didn't see it. What's certain was whether Usato could survive or not. He was tested, so when facing a strong enemy later, what would he do? But after witnessing this event, it was really beyond her expectations. In this mission, Usato succeeded, and Bluely was also told to go home with him because he had no one else. But because Usato told Rose she was a brutal girl and such, he wouldn't expect to sleep peacefully tonight. Finally, Usato passed the qualification as he desired. Usato would become Rose's companion because he had good physical abilities, endurance, and other qualities that the other two healers didn't have. Rose might be right on time because the Demon Kingdom's troops were about to attack. It seemed from the Demon Kingdom's side, they were preparing their troops to attack Langer Kingdom. Since the demon army would attack soon, Usato would be kept at the forefront with Rose to save the injured soldiers. Usato found it strange why it had to be him. Why didn't the other two healers come? They were placed elsewhere, while Usato, given that responsibility, still wasn't sure of his strength. But Rose had time for Usato to train again. Meanwhile, it seemed the demon camp was ready, preparing their troops for the attack. They were confident they would win, but surely they would be troubled by some things, so they had to remain vigilant. A person named Amila would take command in the attack later. After he went out, there was another demon, a research part demon. He saw Amelia, the third commander, looking tense after facing her king. She was told to take command for the upcoming war. Well, this doctor has prepared his modified giant snake. Like yesterday, he said this one is more dangerous during the previous war. One of the snakes went missing, maybe the one from yesterday that Rose eliminated while Glyze was fighting it. Actually, Amila has a grudge, not against Glyze but against Rose, who always transports the wounded soldiers to the rear and can also fight. Unfortunately, she can't fight yet and will be handed over to the leader of the warriors later, named Black Knight, who is already preparing his troops on the other side. Usato can now sleep again on such a comfortable bed. Then, he woke up Blue Grizzly who was still sleeping and fed him some fruits. It seemed he really likes his fruits. While Usato was eating, his fruits were taken by him. There's also Rose's pet who initially didn't want to give because he was mean to Usato, but eventually he gave it. Shortly after giving the food, Rose arrived and found out that Blue Grizzly was named Blue Grizzly by Usato. Now the animal can be kept by Usato, taken to the city or the kingdom as long as Blue Grizzly is willing to be an asset or help them later. Then Rose said for Usato to continue his training. This time Usato was given the same running training but with added weight, Blue Grizzly on his back. This is to get him used to carrying soldiers later. When he started his training, he was surprised that his friends were disturbing him according to Rose's orders. Consider them part of the enemies who will make it difficult for Usato to carry victims. They attacked him until he could escape, but his body was already exhausted, he couldn't continue. He felt strange why it was like this. Shortly after, Rose came and just told him that Usato's stamina was not stable yet, especially since he wasn't used to carrying people, so he needed to be honed continuously. Then Rose ordered Usato to run around the city and the kingdom. He immediately carried out his duties. After he entered the city, people paid attention to him and he became the center of attention, but not too much. Especially since Usato is a rescue team. Soon after, while running, Blue Grizzly saw his favorite fruit there. When he approached, he didn't want to buy it because he had no money, he just wanted to ask what fruit it was. It turned out to be a royal fruit called Uffle. Then Usato asked why people weren't excited when he passed by with the dangerous Blue Grizzly. They already knew that Usato was from the rescue team, so they were no longer surprised by his training. They already knew it was very hard. After chatting, Usato wanted to continue his journey, but he got a pupel fruit from the granny for free. Shortly after he left, a child came to help. When Usato wanted to go to the kingdom to meet Kazuki and Inukami, someone was calling out to him from behind. But Usato didn't hear it at all because he wasn't used to running and ended up falling. Only after he fell did Usato hear it. Then he treated himself. He asked if this person was calling him. Apparently, he was. His name is Orga. He wants to greet his junior because he's also from the rescue unit. Usato just found out about this, meaning the healer Rose mentioned is this person, but apparently he can't heal himself or something like that. Usato only knew recently that there are many types of healers. He and his sister are now assigned to a government clinic. He asked Yusato, "Where are you from?" Yusato honestly replied, "I come from another world, sucked into this one by a hero." Then Yusato asked if it's true that the Demon Kingdom will attack soon. He was curious about the duties of Tong and his friends, and also about this healer. In case of emergency after battles, Tong and his friends usually transport the wounded to the rear, where this healer will heal them. So, you could say he's stationed at the back. This is why Rose placed the healer and another healer in the rear. She said if Yusato were placed at the front with Rose, they wouldn't randomly place people because being at the front means being in proximity to heroes at greater risk of attack. So Yusato must be brave and also save the heroes near him. He still feels unsure, but he will continue his training before leaving. The healer told Yusato not to hate Rose because she's not actually a bad person, but Yusato never hated her, even though her training was very tough. He doesn't mind, he immediately leaves. Finally, Rose finds the person she was looking for since her sister came because she was looking for the healer but couldn't find him. She tells her sister that if she meets Yusato, she'll surely become friends with him.